Yo, what's good, YouTube, man? It's Gary with the Fan TV back after this video at the content. This video, go smash that like button at the content of this channel. Go and subscribe, man. Look, so I want to talk about, I guess, some of the Ravens kind of free agency news, right? Free agency is March 12th, right? So talk about some stuff that, I guess, some rumors, after the combine and things like that before we really get started going into free agency. Maybe we do like a longer free agency podcast or something like that, going over, who's coming back, who's not, some potential targets for the Ravens, things like that, right? We may do something like that, okay? But just want to talk about a couple of things that I saw. I saw a ESPN article, right? Just some insider talks about what's happening, what's kind of been a buzz around the combine, and I went in there looking for anything that was Ravens related, right? So a couple of things stood out in there that was Ravens related. Okay, number one, Ronnie Stanley's market is expected to be 21 to 23 million dollars per year, right? And two Ravens kind of getting free agency buzz, right? Brandon Stevens and Pat McCary, right? So for Pat McCary, it was about the fact that he's played off opposition on the offensive line. Swiss Army knife, kind of the same things that we already say about Pat. Other teams are taking notice of and may want to sign him, right? Brandon Stevens, tough physical corner, and I think that in the line in there it says that the teams knows that he's a guy that's always going to compete, right? So we know we have like, things with Brandon Stevens, right? But effort really wasn't one of those things, right? He's close to the play, not really making the play all the time. But effort was never really one of the complaints I had with Brandon Stevens, right? Now, just to talk about this a little bit further, right? Now, the 21 to 23 million dollars for Ronnie Stanley, to me, yeah, that's a little steep. I'm not gonna lie, right? That's a little steep as well. All right. So how I feel about that, if the Ravens could get Ronnie Stanley for 21 and below, I would feel good. I think $23 million a year for a guy that I wouldn't want to get a contract to no longer than 3 years. Really, a 2 year deal. Okay, I guess it'd be like this, right? Ravens give him a 3 year deal. They have an option to get out after the second year, right? In case things go bad, whatever, what have you, right? And Ronnie Stanley is 31 years old at this point in time, right? So um, I do want him back, but if it's for $23 million a year, he's probably not going to get that in Baltimore, right? If that's truly his market value and that's truly what he gets, we'll see, right? Now, encouraging news is the fact that Eric DeCosta has said previously that relationships are good, that he expects Ronnie Stanley to be back. John Harbaugh kind of sounded optimistic about Ronnie Stanley coming back. Now, I don't think Ronnie Stanley is going to take some kind of hometown discount or something like that. But if the Ravens can get him back for a reasonable number, I'll be fine with it, right? I don't think that 27, I mean, not 27, that 23 is a reasonable number. That's just my opinion, right? So if that happens, then for me, that's kind of the worst case scenario. The Ravens are going to have to really, really rebuild the offensive line again. You can move Rosengard in the left tackle, but after that, you're kind of searching, right? Obviously you still have Tyler Linderbaum at center. He's going to be a mainstay for many years to come. But to me, Flele is not an automatic starter. You got to figure out the left guard, and then if Ronnie Stanley leaves, Roger Rosengarten shifts over. You're gonna have to figure out right tackle again for the second year in a row, right? So I think the Ravens are going to try to do their best to sign Ronnie Stanley, but it may just come down to the fact they may just get priced out, right? And it may just be as simple as that, and there's nothing that they can do about it, right? Now about the other guys that are free agents, right? The two that I mentioned in the article. I don't expect Brandon Stevens or Pat McCary to be back with the Ravens. I really don't. I know that John Harbaugh kind of stirred up some Ravens fans when he said that, well, yeah, Brandon Stevens may come back. It was kind of like an offhand kind of comment at the combine. Somebody was interviewing them about the Ravens free agents and whatnot. Um, I don't think they're going to bring him back. That's just my personal opinion on it. There's nothing really to do about he was so bad last year that the Ravens ain't going to pay him. It's just that the market that he's going to get is probably going to be higher than what the Ravens are probably going to be willing to pay him, right? That's just my opinion on it, right? You got a starting caliber cornerback. Brandon Stevens has his warts, but he is a starter. Um, he's going to get paid not nothing crazy, but around the mid tier kind of corner. I can see Brandon Stevens getting that kind of contract, and that's probably more than what the Ravens are going to be willing to offer, right? They may want to go cheaper, try to bring back Trey White. TJ Tampa's going to be in his second year. Hopefully he can get some playing time, and they probably are going to draft a cornerback as well, right? So with all of those things kind of in the mix, I don't really see Brandon Stevens coming back. You know what I mean? That's just my personal opinion on it. McCary is kind of the same way, right? I think McCary had a shot to be a starter this year. I don't think that he was overly impressive in that time being a starter. So if I'm the Ravens, I cut bait, right? There's no reason for me to really keep him around um, and see what he could turn into, right? To me, that's kind of a little bit of a waste of time, right? I feel like McCary is one of those guys where he's kind of reached his ceiling, right? You know, what he is now is what he's probably going to be, and relying on him or hoping that he gets better at this point forward, I think it's probably a bad bet, right? So if I'm the Ravens, I'm moving on from a lot of guys, honestly, in this free agency, and I don't think the Ravens have too many people in free agency right now that are going to be guys that it's like, wow, the team's gonna be drastically different if we don't bring this player back. They don't have too many of those kind of free agencies this year, right? So Ronnie Stanley's kind of the main big one. Patrick Ricard, who I expect to be back. So like Ronnie Stanley, Patrick Carr, two guys I expect to be back, two guys at the Ravens offense. Um, I would say they need, right? Ricard is still a very, very important blocker, right? We're not get too much into that. But when I read the article and I saw the buzz, I'm not mad at it, right? Teams around the league like to have Ravens players on their team. Ravens still have that reputation of having good players and guys playing the right way, this and that. So when these guys come free agents, teams do like to get these kind of guys. Now, it's not for maybe it has value as maybe Ravens fans think those guys will be, but teams do snap them up, right? Now, what else I want to talk about is the fact that I saw a video, right? Uh, it was Ravens salary cap. You follow him on Twitter, Brian McFarland. He was on a podcast. It might have been a Locked On podcast, right? And they were talking about Mark Andrews and what is expected for Mark Andrews this offseason. Right? Will he be a Raven? Will he not be a Raven? And it was a small clip, but his expectation was how he broke it down was Mark Andrews is the most likely outcomes for him to be traded. All right. And that the return for Mark Andrews is going to be something in the neighborhood of a fourth or a fifth round pick, right? Because of factors like age, the team that trades for him is probably going to want to extend him to lower his cap hit. I think his cap hit is around $11 million, right? Um, so for me, right, that's kind of tough, man. That's tough, right? I think that the Ravens have Isaiah Likely here, and Isaiah Likely is more than capable of being tight end one and being a guy that they can, slide into that position and still have Charlie Kohler, and then draft another tight end if they so choose in rounds 4 through 7. The Ravens seem to be able to find tight ends later in the draft than other teams can, right? The tight end is a position that they draft really well, right? So they can find somebody in there to be that kind of third tight end if they so choose to let Mark Andrews walk. But for me, the return of a full fifth round pick it just seems low. Um, I thought that Mark Andrews, his return would probably be a third round pick. So I'm not talking about drastically higher or anything like that. Definitely not a second. Obviously not a first or anything crazy like that, right? Like I have seen some Ravens fans thinking that Carolina's going to trade their pick from no, it's not happening, man, not at all. Now they may give up a third round pick, fourth round pick, but for me that third round pick range seems ideal. If you're going to walk away from Mark Andrews, I could see it being for that. I don't want the Ravens to walk away from Mark Andrews and get little to nothing in return, right? Fifth round pick can be something, but more than likely, it's not going to be a guy that's going to help this team out in the near future, right? So that's my apprehension about trading Mark Andrews just for anything, right? Like, oh well, yeah, your time's here is up. Fifth round pick out the door, right? That would give me some pause, right? That would give me some pause, right? If that's truly the trade market for Mark Andrews, the Ravens might be better off. Um, seeing if they can get one more year out of him, right? I know you're gonna say, well, get one more year out of him. He's a free agent next year. Then you let him walk for nothing. I think sometimes as fans, even as teams, they get too caught up of everything must return for value, right? We must get something from everybody, and that's really not always the case, right? The same value, the fifth round pick is probably not going to give you anywhere near close to the value of even a 30-year-old Mark Andrews is going to give you. Um, so I don't really see like an equal exchange there right now. It's about money. It's not really about straight up talent for talent, obviously. But still, that fifth round pick for Mark Andrews, that would feel very, very low to me. and I would question if the Ravens should do that, right? Like I said, all the faith in Isaiah Likely. Think he could be a great tight end. Think he's already a really good tight end with more opportunities. He could turn into one of those guys in the league, one of those top guys in the league, right? But you know, I'm not rushing to have that happen if it means giving the Mark Andrews to me, which is basically for free, right? And another thing too is like I saw, one of these rumors that are abound on Twitter, right? It's a million different rumors. Ravens going to trade for this guy. They're going to sign this guy. It's that kind of season right now, right? Where you're linked to dang near every player. Okay, but in terms of just Ravens related news, it was like the Ravens want to give Isaiah Likely a contract extension. That was the rumor, and I want Isaiah Likely on this team. So I'm not saying that he should be traded or anything like that. I want Isaiah Likely on this team. But if you're going to trade Mark Andrews because of the contract, then you're gonna turn around and sign Isaiah Likely, that the numbers have to make sense, right? It's just simple as that. The numbers have to make sense. It almost has to be how, like, Rashad Bateman, they got Bateman on a deal because they signed him early because Bateman did something weird with his contract where he couldn't be eligible for a fifth-year option. His agent fumbled the bag on that one, his past agent. But I think it's going to have to be something like that where it makes sense for the Ravens to do it, right? Isaiah Likely is obviously younger, more explosive, things like that, and his cap hit is going to be lower if they decide to give him that contract. But do you want to have all your money tied up in tight end position again, right? If that's one of the main reasons you just got off of a tight end, if you do decide to trade Mark Andrews, right? We'll see. We'll see, right? You could be at the other side of it, say, well, the Ravens get rid of Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely's tight end one, and he blows up. The Ravens price themselves out of re-signing him because he signed somewhere else. Both things are true, right? So for the Ravens this offseason, it's going to be very, very interesting to see what they decide to do and see who they value as important monetarily on their team, right? Because if you want to know what's important to your team, look where the money is. As simple as that. So if you see your team investing in certain areas, that's what they view as important, right? Most of these teams in the NFL are not spending money on players, on positions that they don't value as important on their team, right? It's just not happening like that, right? So the Ravens decide to go that route. They're going to show you what their value is, right? But for me, if I had to get like my final thought on that's kind of like the tight end dilemma, right? If the trade value for Mark Andrews is truly only a fifth round pick, I would prefer the Ravens to keep him, right? Honestly, I would prefer the Ravens to keep him. All right, the cap hit is the cap hit. If you want to do something to get it lower, or if it's just say, hey, look, the cap hit is too high, we got to get rid of him. I can understand that, but for a fifth round pick, it just seems like a waste, right? You know what I mean? It just seems like a waste, I'm being completely honest with you, right? Really has nothing to do with faith or lack of faith in Isaiah Likely. It's just more about getting a return on investment, right? For Mark Andrews, right? Because Mark Andrews next year could still be a guy, if he's with the Ravens, that breaks 1,000 yards, gets another 10 touchdowns, still has a really, really good year. And trading that away potentially for a fifth round pick doesn't sit right with me. That's just my opinion on it, right? And then as far as other free agency goes, like I said, I think Pat McCurry, Brandon Stevens won't be Ravens next year. And I do think the Ravens do find a way to get Ronnie Stanley back. I don't think it's going to be $23 million a year. If I had to guess, it's going to be somewhere between 17 and 20 if he does come back, right? I don't see the Ravens going to 23, right? But that's my thoughts on it, man. Obviously, I reply to all comments. So give me your thoughts on kind of this Ravens free agency buzz and what do you think is going to happen? But it's Gabriel, to another Fan TV. I'm out.